3 months after our breakup, my ex-boyfriend suddenly called. The bar's empty now. Why haven't you come to pick me up? My eyes instantly welled up, and I tried hard to suppress the lump in my throat, asking softly where he was. Suddenly, wild laughter burst out over the phone, and he gasped between laughs. Are you crazy? Implying truth or dare. I choked on my tears. You can say whatever you want. Just come home with me. There was a moment of silence on the other end. Who the hell is Gu Yi? It's been 3 months since the breakup, and my illness has relapsed again. The nightmare that I hadn't had in a while has returned to haunt me. In the dream, a gloomy, handsome man kissed me while we were doing the most intimate thing. But he pressed a gun against my waist. In agony, he told me he loved me. And with reddened eyes, he pulled the trigger. The gunshot echoed. There were no bullets in the chamber. Yet my dagger, without hesitation, sliced across his throat. In the dream, he's still carrying a triumphant smile before death, asking me to take him home. The immense sorrow engulfed my heart, and I woke up choking with grief. It's absurd to say, but this dream has tortured me for 3 long years. The soul-crushing pain in the dream still lingers when I wake, trapping me in the agony of losing a lover. I've seen a psychologist for this. I told them that I fell in love with a man in my dream. That man was called Gu Yi. After hypnosis and sleeping pills failed, the doctor suggested I start a relationship. If I could transfer my feelings to someone else. If not, at least it could help me break the cycle. That's when Zhang Dong appeared. He looked exactly like the man from my dream. Then naturally took the phone away, smiling as he said, "You never used to watch these kinds of emotional videos." I believed he was the Gu Yi from my dream. The same eyebrow. Even the casual curve of his lips was identical. One night in the bar, he was leaning drowsily in a corner, holding on to the hem of my clothes, asking if I could take him home. In that moment, it felt like a déjà vu, as if my Gu Yi had finally stepped out of my dream. I brought him home and stayed by his side on the sofa all night. But when he opened his eyes and met my sorrowful gaze, he burst into laughter. His shoulders shook as he laughed. A little disappointed that nothing happened, he glanced at my collar. Next time, lower it a bit, and maybe I won't fall asleep so fast. Despite his rudeness, that sense of fate made me put aside my pride and get involved with him. At first, I loved him to the point of no return. I would anxiously ask him at sunset if he would ever leave me. In the dead of night, I would wake up and touch his neck to make sure there were no wounds before I could fall back to sleep. I channeled all my guilt for Gu Yi from the dream into Zhang Dong, indulging him in every way. I cleaned up the messes he caused without a word of complaint, and I cared for him day and night when he was in the hospital, fearing that he would disappear like in the dream if I blinked. He would often stare at me, lost in thought, murmuring about why we hadn't met sooner. At the time, I didn't understand the weight of his words. Not until that Valentine's Day, Zhang Dong, usually low-key, suddenly became uncharacteristically showy. He brought me to a fancy restaurant, walking in with a bouquet in hand. His lazy steps and burning gaze drew the attention of many girls, some even taking out their phones to secretly take pictures. He glanced at them, smirking. "Make sure it looks good." He leaned down and gave me a lingering kiss. I could hear something inside my chest going thump thump, thump thump, like it was about to burst out. Amid the cheer, he asked the person for the picture and flamboyantly posted it on his social media. I thought, he finally going to take this absurdly started relationship seriously. But after all that, he seemed a bit distracted. Faced with my excitement and nervousness, his responses were half-hearted, absently glancing at his phone now and then. When he received a call from a contact labeled a, he suddenly straightened his posture and cast a subtle glance out the window. I told him to take care of his business, but he hung up and gave me a doting smile. "Being with you is the most important thing today," he said as he picked up some food and affectionately fed me. Perhaps he didn't even realize what he had picked up was the decorative lettuce on the plate. After feeding me, he took a napkin and wiped my mouth. Even though there was nothing dirty, a bad feeling crept up on me. Sure enough, after these series of intimate gestures, his phone started ringing incessantly, again and again. Zhang Dong forced a troubled smile and pretended to reluctantly say that something urgent had come up at work and he had to leave. I smiled and told him to hurry back. And with a complicated expression, he looked at me for a few seconds, and then hurriedly turned to leave. On impulse, I followed him. Downstairs, not far from the restaurant, stood a beautiful girl. From her angle, she could see everything Zhang Dong and I had done in the restaurant. A chilling thought struck me. Was this showy date staged for that girl? Zhang Dong had been running as he left, but slowed down when he approached the girl, Lin Ji, wearing an impatient expression. He told her he was on a date and asked her to speak quickly. Linja's face was full of heartbreak as she asked why he was humiliating himself. Even if I don't agree to be your girlfriend, you can't just find someone random to mess around with. Is this fair to the people who care about you? Zhang Dong was silent for 2 seconds. His silence felt like a judgment, condemning me as that random person. After a long pause, he finally snapped. How do you know I can't really fall in love with her? Lin Ji gave a bitter smile. Don't you know what love feels like? Then, she grabbed his collar and, standing on her tiptoes, kissed him. Video, passionate kiss, and Zhang Dong froze in place. In just a moment, Lin Ji pulled away. That's what chaos feels like. That's what real love feels like. Then naturally took the phone away, smiling as he said, "You never used to watch these kind of emotional videos. Zhang Dong, even if I don't agree to be with you, you can't just find someone random to humiliate yourself." At that moment, I hid behind a pillar, crying silently. That's when I finally realized he wasn't some destined person in his life. I was just someone he found to provoke Lin Ji. He resented Lin Ji's indecision, so he randomly chose me. He picked me out at the bar, saying that the colder a girl looks on the outside, the wilder she is in private. He bet I would take him home. And I really did behind that pillar. Like a voyeur, I watched them go from a heated argument to embracing and passionately kissing. They looked just like the main characters of some angst. And I was merely the disposable side character. The sharp pain in my chest felt unbearable, and I decided to break up with him. But perhaps it was just my imagination. The suffocating pressure I had felt for 3 years because of Gu Yi seemed to ease a bit. Maybe this was what the doctor meant by withdrawal. That night, Zhang Dong didn't come home until very late. I scrolled through his social media, and the photo he had posted showing off our relationship was already gone. We didn't meet again until a few days later, when he arrived, looking worn out. He embraced me as if we hadn't seen each other in ages and immediately leaned in for a kiss. He closed his eyes, as if savoring the moment. I imagined he was trying to feel if there was the chaos Lin Ji had mentioned in this kiss. I pushed him away. He averted his eyes in a panic, guilt and confusion flickering in them. A sharp pain began to spread through my chest again. This time, I was certain the suffocating feeling in my heart was truly fading. Since he had used me first, treating him like a withdrawal drug didn't seem too out of line. In the days that followed, Zhang Dong became more and more reckless. Emboldened by my indulgence, his attitude toward me fluctuated between hot and cold. When he needed me, he would show off our love intensely. But as soon as he had achieved his goal of provoking Lin Ji, he would distance himself from me again. Only when Lin Ji pushed him away would he remember me. The two at his disposal, I pretended to be oblivious to it all, meekly and carefully playing the role of his loyal follower. Even his friends knew I was just a stand-in who had offered myself up, mocking me with sarcastic comments, calling me a. Sometimes, they didn't even bother to hide their disdain. Zhang Dong would only make a token effort to tell them to say less. He constantly tested my limit, and when he realized my tolerance had no bounds, he began to respect me less and less. I endured the heartache of betrayal and being used, bit by bit completing my emotional withdrawal. With each instance of Zhang Dong treating me dismissively while wearing Gu Yi's face, my attachment to Gu Yi diminished. I barely had the dream anymore, and the suffocating pressure in my chest had almost disappeared. I was using the self-degrading method to say goodbye to both Zhang Dong and Gu Yi. I was close to succeeding. That night, I dreamed of Gu Yi again. It was as if he sensed something. He came to say goodbye. "Long time no see. Nancy, are you forgetting me?" Then naturally took the phone away, smiling as he said, "You never used to watch these kinds of emotional videos. If forgetting me makes you happier, I'm okay with it." In the dream, the wound on his neck from my dagger still visible, I woke up in tears, my heart aching so badly that I couldn't breathe. Desperately trying to save my soul, I dialed Jung Dong's number. Sanya was a kinestheoncy had been just about to call me. He told me his car had broken down on a rural road and asked if I could come pick him up. Without hesitation. When I got there, I found out he was there to pick up Lin Ji, who was sick and needed to be taken home. Before I could say anything, he cut me off, preemptively explaining that I shouldn't misunderstand their concern for each other as childhood friends, whether to avoid suspicion in front of me or to continue provoking Lin Ji. He chose to sit in the front passenger seat, leaving Lin Ji in the back. Unfortunately, just as we were driving down the rural road, a runaway raptor came hurtling toward us. I thought of Gu Ye's departing figure from my dream, and panic surged uncontrollably within me as I frantically tried to turn the steering wheel. Jung Dong was unharmed. I was struck hard by the airbag. My vision clouded with red, trapped in the driver's seat, unable to move. In a daze, I heard Jung Dong's desperate cry was calling out for Lin Ji. That moment, I could clearly feel the suffocating weight on my chest was about to lift completely. I was so close to breaking free. But when I woke up in the hospital, Jung Dong was standing there with bloodshot eye, breaking up with me. He looked at the bandage on my forehead, where blood had seeped through, and with trembling hands, "It was just for fun. Why did you take it seriously?" I was terrified. I cried and begged him, "We can break up. But can't you wait a little longer? Just until I fully recover from this addiction." I was pathetic and humble, drawing whispers from those around us. Jung Dong's eyes showed a hint of pity, but in the end, he clenched his fists and fled. I knew he was scared. I had risked my life to save him, and he couldn't handle it. But could someone like him, who lived so recklessly, actually fear trampling on someone's feelings? Or maybe it wasn't fear, it was because Lin Ji had been hurt, and he wanted to give his all to win her back. Whatever the reason, my withdrawal was interrupted just when I was about to succeed. I spent the next 3 months living in fear, always worried that the heavy stone on my chest would come crashing down again. And it did. I had the dream again and woke up suddenly, curled up in bed, my hands trembling as I lit a cigarette. The smoke spread through the air, carrying the familiar scent from the dream. But my heart twisted in pain, out of control. That's when Jung Dong's call came in, like a lifeline thrown to me. His deep voice, laced with a hint of grievance, caught me off guard. "The bar's cleared out. Sick. Why haven't you come to pick me up?" That voice, it was exactly the same as in the dream. My eyes instantly welled up, and I fought back my tears, asking him softly where he was. I heard wild laughter from the other end. The deep, aggrieved tone was gone, replaced by Jung Dong's breathless laughter. "Are you stupid or what? I'm playing truth or dare." It felt like a bucket of cold water had been dumped over me. The sadness inside cracked open, and the suffocating pressure in my chest unexpectedly eased. My withdrawal medication was starting to take effect again after 3 months. I tested the waters, choking back sobs. "You can call me whatever you want, as long as you come home with me." The laughter grew louder, full of smugness. Replied, "Don't you get it? I'm playing a game. Stop dragging this out." Sure enough, the suffocation continued to fade. I stood up and stubbed out my cigarette. "Tell me where you are. Let me see you one more time." There was sudden silence on the other end of the line. Then a pause, followed by, "What the heck? Who's Guyi?" I could hear whispers and muttering on Jung Dong's end. Then naturally took the phone away, smiling as he said, "You never used to watch these kinds of emotional videos. Isn't she Dong Simp? Why is she calling some other guy's name? Dong, are you serious? She probably only agreed to pick you up because she thought you were that Guyi dude. Guess you lost this round." Jung Dong gritted his teeth and cursed at me. "I don't think you can just make up some guy to fool me. I'm giving you an out here. I've sent you the address. If you're not here in 30 minutes, don't even think about us getting back together." I quickly got in the car and drove to the address Jung Dong set. Though the suffocating feeling wasn't as intense as before, it still weighed heavily on me, like a stone on my chest, making it hard to breathe. I knew that Jong Dong, after being humiliated, would make me pay double for it later. The more extreme his behavior, the more it would help with my withdrawal. Maybe this humiliation would be the final, strongest dose I needed. If it didn't work, it would mean that Jong Dong, as my withdrawal medication, had developed resistance, and it would be time to switch to a new drug. The bar was bustling with noise and excitement. Most people were lingering, waiting for the show to see how Jong Dong would humiliate the simp who had called out the wrong name. As I walked in, they were checking the time. She really made it in under half an hour. She must have run every red light to get here. Dong's got some serious pull. Are women really this shallow now? Is it all just about look? He's played her like this, and she's still chasing him. Jong Dong remained silent, leaning in a dark corner, half his face hidden in the shadow, making him look even more like Gu Yi. As our eyes met, a wave of drowning sadness slowly enveloped me again. Perhaps my teary eyes pleased him, because he curled his lips into a smile. Then, he picked up a bottle, pouring 3 large glasses of alcohol, and in a condescending tone said, "Drink them all, and I'll forgive you." His face emerged into the light. At that moment, he truly seemed like Gu Yi stepping out of my dream. I didn't know why he had come back to memory. He had another falling out with Lin Ji. Or maybe had finally realized my worth. But none of that mattered. What mattered was that this time, the smile on my face immediately sparked ridicule. Oh my god. Is she actually clutching her chest in happiness? You should start giving lessons on how to train them. This is too much for how obedient she is. Their cruel words didn't affect my excitement at all. I picked up the first glass and downed it in one go. The first one. To my soul for being so persistent, for not giving up easily. The room erupted in booth, with whispers of disdain mixed in. Damn, how pathetic. She comes whenever he calls, leaves whenever he waves her off. Jong Dong let his friends mock me without saying a word, and he even seemed a little smug. I took a deep breath, feeling the heavy weight on my chest finally lifting. I picked up the second glass and looked straight at Jong Dong. The second one, to Jong Dong for treating me with indifference, for never seeing me as a person. The murmurs turned into loud laughter and insults. This is too much. She really likes this kind of treatment. Duh. I'm calling dibs. If you get bored with her, don't throw her away, let me have a go. Jong Dong frowned slightly, displeased with the comment, but still let me finish the second glass. For the first time, my chest felt completely light, as if I had never dreamt of Gu Yi at all. I felt a bit dizzy, and I smiled broadly, my steps becoming unsteady. I grabbed Jong Dong's hand and examined it closely. His hand was smooth, without the calluses of someone who had held a gun. I turned his arm over, noticing a faint scar on his forearm. The texture didn't feel right. Gu Yi's scar was deeper. The noise around us was overwhelming. People talking about how desperate I was for Jong Dong's body. Even Jong Dong's usual teasing demeanor softened, and he gently comforted me. You're drunk. Don't worry, let's go home now, he said, standing to help me amidst the jeers. But I pushed him back down, my eyes fixed on the open collar of his shirt. One last check, and I would rise from the ashes. Amidst the crowd's mocking and lustful gazes, I slowly pulled back Jong Dong's collar. And no trace of it being removed by laser. Jong Dong gasped, his voice hoarse. Nancy, we can't do this here. Whistles echoed around us, but I finally saw the truth. Jong Dong was not Gu Yi. As a withdrawal drug, he'd already served his purpose. He was no longer of any use to me. I abruptly pulled away and picked up the third glass. For the first time, Jong Dong's face showed concern as he raised his hand to stop me. You can't drink anymore. You're drunk? But before he could finish, he met my clear, unwavering gaze. I smiled at him. The third one is to mourn our brief, ill-fated relationship. I tipped the glass, spilling the alcohol at Jong Dong's feet. Jong Dong, you acted well, but in the end, You're still not my Guyi. In his shocked and angry eyes, I let go of the glass. It shattered, flying like the pieces of a colorful dream breaking apart. When Zhang Dong realized Guyi might actually exist, his face darkened with rage. He threw his glass and kicked one of the guys who had been egging him on, then naturally took the phone away, smiling as he said, "You never used to watch these kind of emotional videos. Nancy, if you back down now and apologize, I won't hold it against you." I glanced at the mess around us and smiled at him. "Oh no, Master Zhang, if you let this go, you won't be like my Guyi." But my Guyi, when he holds a grudge, it's never something as low level as smashing glasses or kicking his underlings. When he's truly pissed, he doesn't say a word. He just cocks his gun and, if he's in a bad mood, even adds a silencer. As I said this, I mimed holding a gun and aimed it at his head. Zhang Dong's forehead veins bulged with rage. I gave him one last look, smiling as I turned to leave. The chaos behind me no longer concerned me, and I wiped the tears from my face. "Goodbye. Duh. Since you once left so decisively, you should never return to disturb me again." After that night, my life returned to peace. Guyi stopped appearing in my dreams, and though I felt a bit lost during idle moments, it didn't hurt like it used to. Zhang Dong, on the other hand, sent word through someone else, saying, "I've never seen Dong this angry. Even hung up on Linji to come home with you. You just go back to him and apologize like before. You'll finally be on top." I blocked and deleted that person immediately. I had indeed gotten through it. The chest pain was gone, and work became much easier. Coincidentally, the theater troupe started rehearsing a new play, and my co-star was Shang Jing, a popular actor. He had come to the troupe to hone his acting skills, and the troupe valued him so much that they even tailored a new script just for him. But the moment I got the script, and down my spine, it was a tragic love story. A battle of life and death. The male and female leads came from opposing faction, testing and teasing each other, their psychological defenses slowly crumbling. Their true feelings were hidden behind lies, and they became lost in the blurred lines between love and desire. In the climactic moment, the male lead shoots the female lead. The gun had no bullet. The woman's knife slashes across the man's throat, and the man smiles in defeat. "In the next life," he says, "in the next life, you'll take me home." An invisible hand seemed to grip my throat, and sorrow flooded over me like a rising tide, drowning me. "The male lead named Guyi," I murmured. It was at that moment that Shang Jing walked in. He strode into the room, backlit, his silhouette outlined in golden light. A group of people followed him, discussing the script as they walked. He nodded politely and distantly at me, then naturally sat on the sofa beside me. "That's a good name. Let's use it." With just one brief glance from those almond-shaped eyes, I felt a strange illusion, as if he had come for me. Then he turned back to discuss the scene with the director, focusing entirely on their conversation until his assistant brought over some fruit tea. Without missing a beat, he placed a cup in front of me, as if we shared some unspoken understanding. I stared at his profile, so different from Gu Ye, and found myself drifting off. Shang Jing's slightly low voice brought me back to reality. He was saying to the director, "Let's try the scene. If Miss Nancy has no objection." He turned to me, his gaze questioning. I snapped out of my thought. The scene we were about to rehearse was the passionate farewell, and the director wanted to see how well we played off each other. A play with no chemistry would sell ticket, and I had no reason to refuse. Though it was a bit awkward to rehearse an intimate scene during our first meeting, the director kindly cleared the room for us. During the break, Shang Jing, as a matter of form, asked me if I had any boundaries with the scene. I assured him that I had read the script and was comfortable with it. Shang Jing nodded and then began to take off his suit jacket. He wore a fitted black shirt that accentuated his slender waist. 2 buttons were undone, revealing a sharp contrast between his pale collarbones and the dark fabric, a striking sight. As he unbuttoned his shirt, he lifted his head. I was caught off guard by the intensity and determination in his gaze. The rumors about him being a method actor were true. With just a glance, he was fully immersed in the role. polite, and distant gentleman from moments ago had disappeared, replaced by the wild, unruly outlaw in the script. He stared at me, slowly approaching, his eyes flickering with alternating rage and despair before settling into reluctant resignation as he pulled me into his arms. He turned me around, pressing me against the wall, searching my body as though expecting to find a weapon. When he didn't, he bit down on the back of my neck in frustration. I winced, and as I turned my head, my cheek collided with his lips. He closed his eyes, and in a pained, chaotic motion, he kissed me first my hair, then my brow, nose, and finally seized my lips. The kiss was rough, desperate, and uncoordinated, and let out a sound, partly in pain, partly as a sob, and said through my tears, "Good. Are you going to do it?" I knew, based on the dream, that this was the moment his gun would press into my waist. Tears slipped down my cheeks uncontrollably, but Sheng Jing lifted his head, looking at me with a focused and tender expression. Gently, he wiped away my tears with his thumb. "Screw destiny," he said, tossing his gun into the bathtub, where it sank to the bottom. Sheng Jing smiled, a smile filled with relief and beauty. Then, with abandon, he kissed me again, fiercely, as if there were no tomorrow. And director had forgotten to call cut until Sheng Jing suddenly pulled away and turned his head to curse at him. The director snapped out of his daze and applauded. Good, good. That emotion was perfect. But why did you change the script? And then Nancy was supposed to kill you. Sheng Jing returned to his composed and gentlemanly self, handing me a tissue before tidying his shirt. After a moment, he replied in a hoarse voice. That ending was too depressing. My hand froze mid-wipe, and I looked at him in disbelief. There had been countless nights when I had woken up in anger, resenting Gu Yi for forcing me to kill him, for making me carry the guilt. Yet that resentment was always buried so deeply in sorrow that it felt insignificant. Sheng Jing turned to me. "Don't you agree, Miss Nancy?" he asked quietly, before I could respond. The door swung open with a loud clatter, and Zhang Dong stormed in. As my ex-boyfriend, the staff hadn't tried too hard to stop him. His face was terrifying as he grabbed my wrist. "Did you just call him Gu Yi?" Zhang Dong demanded. Sheng Jing happened to be fastening his last button. "Gu Yi is just a character I play." Then naturally took the phone away, smiling as he said, "You never used to watch these kind of emotional videos." Extending a hand to Zhang Dong with a gentlemanly gesture. "Nice to meet you. I'm Sheng Jing." Zhang Dong didn't let go of me, arrogantly ignoring Sheng Jing's outstretched hand. Sheng Jing raised an eyebrow lightly and tapped Zhang Dong's elbow lightly with his fist. Zhang Dong winced in pain, instinctively retracting his arm and releasing me. "Please show some respect for my leading lady." After Sheng Jing said this, he wiped away the smudge of lipstick that I had left on the corner of his lips with his thumb. Zhang Dong's face contorted with rage. "You insisted on talking to me. He said he consulted my therapist and found out that I was sick. I'm not sure what exactly the doctor told him, but it was clear he had misunderstood the situation. He thought that I had created someone in my dreams. He moaned exactly like Hyman named that person Gu Yi, because I couldn't have him in real life. In his mind, I was dreaming of Gu Yi, who was madly in love with me, because of my unrequited love for Zhang Dong. He believed that my illness was caused by him. There was guilt in his eye, but also a hint of pride. "Nancy, it's my fault. I didn't realize I had hurt you so deeply," he said, reaching for me with a look of fox concern. "You used to stroke my neck at night. Turns out it was because you dreamed you had hurt me. Nancy, you were suffering so much without me even knowing." I dodged his hand, and he awkwardly continued. "I know you're angry with me, and I get it. When you picked me up back then, I thought we both understood it was just a fling. I didn't realize you had such deep feeling." Then naturally took the phone away, smiling as he said, "You never used to watch these kind of emotional videos." "I never would alert you like that." I stared at him, momentarily lost in thought. I wondered if the Gu Yi in my dream, during the moments I was dreaming of him. The cracks in this dream, like tragic love story, had finally started to show. Zhang Dong kept pushing his case. Nancy, it's my fault. You're using this actor to heal because of me. Even calling him Gu Yi. I shouldn't let you down anymore. Don't be stubborn. And I won't hold anything against you. This was the first time Zhang Dong had ever lowered his pride in front of me. After he finished speaking, he looked at me with hope in his eyes. After a brief silence, I suddenly burst into laughter. Zhang Dong's lips curled upward as well, but I calmly asked, "Did the doctor tell you when I started dreaming about Gu Yi?" He looked confused. "Not exactly," he replied, giving me a concerned look, "but we've known each other for over half a year now. Have you been in this much pain all this time?" He was still basking in his self-satisfaction. Completely unaware. Slowly, I pulled up my phone, brought up my medical records, and showed him. 3.5 years. Zhang Dong. I've been dreaming about Gu Yi for 3.5 years. Lucky for me, I met you. A scumbag who looks just like him. I locked eyes with him and said, enunciating every word I used you to quit him. Zhang Dong stood there dumbfounded, his face turning visibly red with embarrassment. "Don't get upset just yet," I said, calmly. "You know you didn't lose anything in that. For the past half year, Zhang Dong had summoned me at his whim, and I always been generous with him and clothes, and everything else. I had even unknowingly helped strengthen his relationship with his childhood sweetheart. No matter how you looked at it, he was on the losing end." I reminded him of that and then told him, logically and emotionally, that it was time for us to part ways. This mutually beneficial arrangement had reached its end. Zhang Dong stood there. While I walked away, just as I was far enough, I heard him laugh, just a soft snicker, then louder, turning into a wild, unrestrained laugh. It sounded just like the arrogant, beautiful voice I heard on the microphone that day. Afterward, life became quieter. The suffocating feeling was replaced by a hollow emptiness in my chest. But luckily, the stage play was about to begin filming, and that emptiness was soon shattered by Shang Jing, the crazy actor. He constantly surprised me by changing the script. What was originally written as a tragic love story became, under his influence, a story of brave yet unresolved love. In the early stages of the script, where there were moments of teasing and probing, Shang Jing completely disregarded the written lines. He said unexpected improvisations would make Miss Nancy experience sudden heart. And he was every unexpected line from him left me in a daze. Pity, as the director said, it looked just like genuine emotional impact. For the first time, I felt touched by someone other than Gu Yi. The blush that crept onto my cheeks, that traveled from my chest to my ears, it felt as if Shang Jing had caught me in the act of a secret crush, controlling and playing with my emotions effortlessly. I passively accepted these emotions, but soon Shang Jing began to demand more. He said he needed me to surprise him too, to create a sense of equality in their interaction, as only balanced chemistry could truly move the audience. So with confusion and sincerity, I looked up at him and asked, "Are you doing all this because you like me?" He paused for a moment, then broke into a smile. "You're catching on fast." We laughed together, and the director, confused, whispered, "Are you two acting? Or is this for me?" To be honest, I wasn't entirely sure myself, but I did notice that Shang Jing's ears had turned red for just a moment. This new dynamic created a tension in the air, an energy called hormone, spreading throughout the theater day by day. As we began to carry the dynamic from work into our personal lives, news about Zhang Dong surfaced once again. He had been in a car accident, and by the time I got word, had already been removed. Though his physical injuries weren't too serious, it was said that his brain had been affected. He went wild in the hospital, and naturally took them on seeing me. With no other choice, I agreed to take his call. On the other end, there was a long silence. Then finally, his hoarse voice came through, choked with emotion. "It's been a while. Have you almost forgotten about me? If forgetting me makes you happier, I can live with that," he added. After months of trying to break free from him, the walls I had built around my heart came crashing down in that instant. I dropped my bag and ran out, barely aware of what I was doing. Shang Jing grabbed my wrist, frowning. "This scene isn't over yet. You're supposed to break the pattern next." I wavered for a moment, unable to think straight. My mind was screaming, Zhang Dong is Gu Yi. Zhang Dong is Gu Yi. Sheng Jing cowled and stopped me. I rushed to the hospital. Straight. The bandage on his injured wrist had been removed, revealing a deep scar just like Gu Yi's. I pulled back his collar, and there was a tiny mole on his collarbone, just beginning to show. I collapsed into the chair behind me, meeting Zhang Dong's bloodshot eyes. He said softly, "It's been a while, Nancy," and with just that one sentence, I knew inside this body was Gu Yi. He gazed at me for a long time, tears welling in his eyes. It was the look of someone who had been reunited after surviving life and death. His eyes were filled with relief at having found me again, but even more so with deep regret for the pain he had caused. "Nancy, I had a long dream in the dream. I was called Gu Yi." His voice was full of sorrow as he looked at me. "But it wasn't really a dream, was it? It was a dream. The love so deep that even hidden within dream, it was unforgettable." My heart ached once again, and all the overwhelming love I had for Gu Yi came flooding back. It was illogical but undeniable. I recalled the moment I raised the dagger. I remembered Gu Yi's triumphant smile. "Don't forget about me, Nancy. Take me home, Nancy." 3 long years of wandering love and longing had finally found their place. I felt like I was about to run over and embrace my Gu Yi, my destined one. Even though something told me I shouldn't, I couldn't help myself. Just then, Sheng Jing called. "Nancy, how about a private date with your Mr. Gu Yi tonight?" The phrase rang in my mind. After a month of rehearsals, hearing Mr. Gu Yi brought back memories of Sheng Jing's constant teasing. He often said, "Someone who loves you would never let you be the one to kill him." His voice on the phone continued. "Nancy, I'd like to discuss the final scene with you tonight. How should we modify it to elevate the theme of breaking free from fate?" My head began to clear, and I resisted the overwhelming urge to embrace Gu Yi. Right in front of me, Zhang Dong was still murmuring, "Nancy, it was a dream. It was real." The dagger at my neck hurt, but nothing could hurt more than being separated by death. I thought I'd never see you again. The clarity in my mind was once again swallowed by a suffocating wave of emotions. 2 forces were pulling at me, and I used every ounce of strength not to throw myself into Zhang Dong's arms. I think I made the right choice because, that moment, a girl named Lin Ji burst into the room. She rushed to Zhang Dong, sobbing, and threw her arms around him, burying her face in his chest. She was clearly terrified, and through her tears, she said that she thought she'd almost lost him. Her regret was palpable, and it seemed that the brush with death had finally made her realize her true feeling. She told Zhang Dong she wanted to take him to get their marriage license. It felt like a bucket of cold water had been dumped over my head, and I was instantly awake. Just then, Sheng Jing's teasing voice came through the phone. "How can you, Miss Nancy, and you're such a clutch plot?" I composed myself and laughed. The truth was just waiting to emerge. I agreed to go on the date with Sheng Jing. As I hurried out of Zhang Dong's hospital room, I caught a glimpse of him coldly confronting Lin Ji. The icy glare, the harsh words, it was a stark contrast to the Zhang Dong I once knew. The change was abrupt and shocking. Seizing the moment, I made by it. Though I cowed and shake off wave after wave of inexplicable emotion, I struggled to dial Sheng Jing's number. And the moment he arrived, I eagerly wrapped my arms around his neck. "You said you wanted to discuss the plot. Can we discuss it however you like?" His eyes sparkled with excitement as he smiled and replied, "As long as you're willing, I'll accompany you to the end." So for the first time, I took the initiative and kissed. I savored the feelings that kiss brought. My heart was truly racing. The love felt soft, not at all suffocating. "It seems like my fate has already been predetermined," I said as I ended the kiss and looked up at Sheng Jing. "You know." He smiled without answering, gently tucking my hair behind my ear after a pause. "Your fate isn't for others to dictate. What if it's the author?" I'd asked calmly. "If I told you this world is a novel, would you believe it?" Sheng Jing scrutinized me for a moment. "What are you thinking? You're not planning to abandon me with fate after tempting me, are you?" I didn't see anything suspicious in his eye. I returned my playful smile. I haven't tempted you. We're just discussing the plot. I took the initiative to change the subject. But my doubts were answered. I was sure I had feelings for Shang Jing. Yet I couldn't help but be drawn to Gu Yi when I saw him. It was irrational, just as I had thought. My fate was indeed written by others. He had determined that Gu Yi was my destined one. This conclusion was a sudden revelation. I had been searching for reasons since the moment I started seeing the psychologist. The sudden appearance of someone in my dream, the longing that spilled into reality, all felt abnormal. Until I successfully broke free from him. I believed I had escaped from an invisible control. Yet, the script had reappeared. It recreated scene, forcing me to relive the deep, tortuous love with Gu Yi. It wanted to regain control over me. To finally validate this suspicion, I said goodbye to Shang Jing and went to the temple of Eriwan that had been frequently on my mind lately. The wise monk seemed to be waiting for me, asking if I was troubled by love. I went along with it and allowed him to hypnotize me. And the dream indeed saw Gu Yi in my past life. All the scenes I experienced in the dream had occurred in that previous life, where we loved each other yet stood opposed. Gu Yi had made a painful decision to leave the chance of life to me, and I succumbed to despair shortly after his death. This hypnosis made it clear Zhang Dong in this life was indeed Gu Yi from my past life. All the signs were screaming that Gu Yi had awakened, and we should rekindle our connection. Beyond this, I also saw other scenes. They were previously unseen, displayed hazily, as if some reason had erased them. I tentatively asked the monk, "Are those fading images the paths Zhang Dong and I were supposed to have?" Those original designs hadn't occurred because of my decision to break free, so they had been erased. The monk's gaze shifted, and he recited mysteriously, unspoken buns. At that moment, what was still unclear, even without his words, I had already guessed the truth. My life is a novel, or perhaps a play. My joys and sorrows are all dictated by the author's pen. I am grateful for Shang Jing's presence. He guided me to question the script and challenge Gu Yi's frustratingly self-destructive behavior. He led me to mock this damn feeling of fate with concrete actions now. Everything is clear, and I think I know what to do next. That night, Zhang Dong was somehow hindered and didn't come looking for me. I finally felt inspired and worked through the night with the director to finalize the performance version. The next morning, Zhang Dong appeared at the theater entrance, and just one look at him made tears stream down my face. He looked haggard yet focused as he gazed at me, seemingly rendered speechless by 1,000 emotions. I had a colleague bring him a ticket for the front row. The first rehearsal today felt deliberately arranged to allow us to revisit the hardships we had faced upon our reunion, attempting to offset the hurt Zhang Dong had caused me before. As the performance began, Zhang Dong sat silently in the audience, his demeanor entirely transformed into that of Gu Yi. Throughout the show, I was acting, and naturally and the sorrow and despair were real. When Shang Jing kissed me, I unconsciously shed tears. When he described the future to me, I saw no hope in his words, only despair. Shang Jing furrowed his brows deeply. He tried to provide me with the sense of safety he had rehearsed, striving to break free from this fate. However, each time I hesitated to speak, he began to look increasingly troubled. Our colleagues around us were shocked to discover that the development of our story mirrored the original script exactly. All the painstakingly crafted changes and sparks of inspiration had not been realized. The entire performance felt unbearably oppressive. In the final moments, the despair in my eyes finally infected Shang Jing. He embraced me from behind, intimately exploring my body, intentionally ignoring the dagger concealed at my waist. He bit me, then kissed me messily with his eyes closed, as if wanting to engrave this feeling deep into his bones. At the most passionate moment, a gun pressed against my waist. "Are you finally going to make a move?" Bang! The gunshot rang out as I instinctively sliced Shang Jing's neck with my hand. Blood gushed out, and Shang Jing laughed triumphantly. "Nancy, don't forget me." In that instant, I could no longer distinguish between dream and play. I cried out in anguish, and Zhang Dong below was also in tears. I read certainty in his eyes, despite the sadness. Seeing me cry, He firmly believed that I still loved him, convinced that we would eventually rekindle our connection from our past life that belonged to us made every second of our days feel like an unspoken understanding. The pain in my heart nearly made me believe it too. If not for Sheng Jing suddenly sitting up, about to die, he murmured after saying, "Don't forget him," before abruptly sitting up from the ground. Damn it. He stretched his neck. Doesn't the male lead have some kind of issue? He then helped me. If you want to die, go kill yourself. Why should anyone else bear the guilt for it? Who the hell is this director? He needs to get lost, the play had intended. This was the final version I had already discussed with the director. A play within a play. Colleagues, watching excitedly, whispered to each other, leading the audience, who were immersed in sorrow, to embrace a new interpretation. Why should someone wanting to die use someone else's hand? Isn't that disgusting? Is it moral coercion wrapped in a cloak of deep affection? Still not allowed to forget him and take him home. Lit. Per reunion in the next life? How low can you go? Phase? Even the drama of abusing dogs for the sake of drama isn't worth performing. Zhang Dong's expression darkened visibly as he forced himself to calm down and scrutinize me. He wanted to find clues in my expression. With Sheng Jing, I lifted my head. Upon seeing the wound on Sheng Jing's neck, I wrinkled my nose and told him to wipe it off quickly. Sheng Jing replied, "You're the one obsessed with this lousy novel and insisted on experiencing Gu Ye's selfless love. Now you're complaining about me." I took a tissue and started to wipe the paint off his wound. How can you know that the one who survives is the one who suffers the most without going through it yourself? According to the script, not only do they have to bear guilt for a lifetime, but they also have to compensate for their debts in the next life. They say that in the next life, he'll still scold her, treating her like a loyal dog, and only after torturing her physically and emotionally will the male lead retrieve his memories from the previous life. Then, with the grace of having saved her life, female lead will endure her disgust and reconcile with him. After I finished speaking, I caught a glimpse of Zhang Dong clutching his chest, his breathing labored despite his effort to remain composed. I had understood that pain well. It had tormented me countless nights. I wrapped my arms around Sheng Jing's neck, then naturally took the phone away, smiling as he said, "You never used to watch these kinds of emotional videos." He made that choice himself. He didn't even try for their love. He went to his death without exploring any possibility. I strongly suspect he actually knows the truth about himself. Sheng Jing smiled at me affectionately. What self-awareness? I guess he probably knew he wasn't the female lead's match. So he resorted to this despicable tactic to make the female lead feel guilty for the lifetimes even if she wins. Sheng Jing smiled non-committally at that. I knew this was pure nonsense, but I couldn't help but want to repay all those years of feeling helpless immediately. Zhang Dong was curled up in his chair. His shoulders slumped. It was impossible not to feel heartache. After undergoing that hypnosis that had me reliving my past life with Guyi. But if I wanted to break free, I had to shed a layer of skin. In the final scene of the play, Sheng Jing asked me, after experiencing all this, "Do you still think my love for you isn't as good as Gu Yes in the play?" I knew he was hinting at something. He was asking this question for himself. I looked deeply down at the audience, feeling the intricate ties and the fateful urge to run towards something without regard for everything else. And it was difficult for me to speak. However, I refused to surrender. I wouldn't yield to the one controlling my fate while showing me not a shred of compassion. I grabbed hold of the lifeline that Sheng Jing extended to me. I immersed myself wholeheartedly in his gaze. It was filled with love. It held my true feelings. I firmly stated, "This so-called fate is nothing but self-deception by those who are emotionally self-indulgent in just following a plot. Why are you taking it seriously? I'm just dreaming." "I won't take it seriously." Sheng Jing embraced me tenderly. The closing music played, featuring snippets of the actor's narration. The so-called destined person does not exist. If they do, brave girls, it's the one your hearts willingly choose to believe in, and there's no room for compromise. As the curtain fell, I saw Zhang Dong slowly collapse onto the front row bench. Then he was completely cut off from the world beyond the curtain. This drama, centered around new feminist thinking. Had a successful first rehearsal. Shang Jing and I would go on to tour dozens of performances. After that, I never saw Zhang Dong again. I thought of Gu Yi, whom I had once loved dearly. At least he was resilient. Sooner or later, he would, like me, discover the flaws in that uncontrollable situation. As someone also manipulated by fate, I sincerely wished for him to break free from his shackles soon. After completely breaking away from Gu Yi, my symptoms gradually improved. I was almost certain I had finally escaped the pen that had controlled me. During the last performance of the tour, Shang Jing finally confessed to me officially. It wasn't on stage or in the rehearsal room, but in a private setting where he formally stepped out of his role in the play and seriously asked me if I wanted to be with him. Once again, I saw that unwavering determination in his eyes. The ray built over dozens of performances, the countless moments of ambiguity during rehearsals, and those genuine expressions of emotion made it clear to him that we had feelings for each other. He looked at me intently and said, "Nanxi, thank you for breaking through the obstacles and coming to my side." He held out a ring in front of me, filled with anticipation. I didn't reach for it. I raised my head and asked lightly, "Do you want me to willingly wear your engagement ring? Is this your strategy?" Sheng Jing was taken aback, the ring falling from his hand. Who could easily grasp countless roles, rarely showed such a flustered expression. After a long moment, he collected himself and laughed self-deprecatingly. He said, "That makes sense. How could a female lead who can escape fate not see through my trick?" I didn't respond because I hadn't known he was the strategist from the beginning. I only suspected he was connected to Gu Yi, and when I saw him emphasizing escaping fate, I thought he was a kind of redemption. Until Zhang Dong awakened. In his eyes, I saw panic. A panic seemed like the fear of losing a lover, which led me to this bold speculation after realizing this was a novel. But it was merely a guess. My earlier certainty was only 3 parts destined, and he gave me the worst answer. The room fell into an uncanny silence. The intimate relationship, stripped of its embellishment, appeared weak and hypocritical. The sweet moments of the past surged forth, flapping Shang Jing's face. He lit a cigarette, the smoke causing him to frown and squint as if it might bring tears. I broke the silence first, asking, "What happens if you succeed in your strategy?" He gazed at me through the smoke for a long time before answering, "I will leave and return to my world." Shang Jing must have been a bit scared. Who doesn't want to go home? He was just one step away from success, and he must have feared I wouldn't support him. I picked up the ring that had fallen on the ground and examined it closely. The part that touches the skin was engraved with our initial. He had put thought into it. He managed to buy the right size even without knowing my measurements. I slipped it onto my finger, and tears began to fall from Sheng Jing's eye. He pretended to be choked by the smoke and suddenly coughed to cover it up. "You don't need to feel guilty," I said with a smile, wiping away the tears on my cheek. "We're just getting what we want." Shang Jing looked at me in confusion. Since he was the strategist, I thought he should have known that my psychologist had given me 2 options. One was to quit through Zhang Dong. The other was to transfer my feeling. Shang Jing was merely another dose of medicine for me. From the moment I saw the script and met him, I had my doubts. Since he was presented to me, there was no reason to not use him. Shang quickly grasped my point. After a moment of silence, he chuckled softly. He took a deep drag on his cigarette and burst out laughing. I laughed too. He picked up a glass of red wine nearby, and we clinked our glasses together. "Here's to a happy collaboration, my Miss Nancy." "But, my Mr. The..." We laughed so hard the tears streamed down our faces. The last performance ended perfectly with a bow. Shang Jing held me tightly on stage, unwilling to let go. "This time, it's really goodbye, my Miss Gu. Go without worry. I won't have any issues. I'd not love either you or Zhang Dong. I wouldn't love the arrangement of fate. Nor would I love the player controlling the pieces like a pawn, even if it was redemption. Breaking free from fate was about wanting my love simply for love's sake, without any other motivation." Eventually, Shang Jing released me and turned to take a bow. After experiencing 2 unforgettable passive encounters, I finally had the freedom to love.